Hey guys, Spirit of the Law here. In the last video, we looked at a Genitour and skirmisher comparison, with some cases where you might favor one over the other. This time, we're going to switch from a generic focus to specific civilization exceptions, and which bonuses or unique techs are worth keeping in mind if you end up allied with Berbers. It's not immediately obvious if the game is consistent in treating them like skirmishers and therefore benefiting from Dravidians, Mayans, and Byzantine bonuses, or if instead they're cavalry archers, getting attack speed upgrades from Mongols and the Huns discount. Of course, they're not affected by Parthian tactics, but is that an exception or does it reveal something about the rule? Essentially, the goal here is to go through various civs that seem they might have a bonus or tech that applies to Genitours, see if it does affect them, and then if that makes them a particularly good choice. Hopefully, this gives you some ideas and plants a seed for the next time you're one of these civs with a Berber ally, so you'll know if your relevant sounding bonus is actually doing you any good. We'll start things off with the most well-known, which is the Turks. The irony is that the Turks are unique for not having the elite skirmisher upgrade, but with a Berber ally get arguably the best Genitours out of any civilization. The key is a unique tech that says it affects cavalry archers, but secretly impacts their Genitours as well. This is also on top of having all of the regular upgrades that you'd want, giving Turk Genitours potentially more than 3 times the HP of the regular skirmisher. Clearly, a Berber ally gives Turks a great option against archer civilizations in the late game, and flips what's usually a weakness into a strength. Next up, Gurjaras actually have a couple of impactful bonuses. The first is a unique tech reducing the food cost of all units by a quarter, meaning their Genitours are just 30 food and 35 wood. Unfortunately, they missed the last armor upgrade, so they're not as tanky as they otherwise would be, but benefit from another advantage, receiving 50% more bonus damage on account of being a mounted unit. Against the heavy cavalry archer, for example, that means doing 13 instead of the regular 9 damage per attack, and remember, this is something the regular skirmisher is not getting, as they aren't mounted. There is a bit of a glass cannon vibe going on here considering the lack of final armor, but they're still nice for some extra support for Gujar camels. Continuing with another Indian civilization, next we have the Dravidians. They're missing both bloodlines and husbandry, so immediately their Genitours aren't looking that great at a glance, but Dravidians have a special bonus for their skirmishers to attack 25% faster, which does apply to Genitours as well. Initially, I was a little surprised this one worked, and it seemed to imply anything affecting skirmishers should also help Genitours. Just to foreshadow a bit here though, there are definitely exceptions to that rule. And as a side note, they're not considered cavalry for the purposes of Woot Steel. This all got me wondering about a similar sounding bonus for the Mongols. While they're missing the last armor upgrade, they have a 25% attack speed bonus for cavalry archers. It may come as a surprise since the Genitour benefited from the Dravidian skirmisher boost already, but it turns out they benefit from the Mongols bonus as well. It seems, at least for attack rate bonuses, they really get the best of both worlds, as both a skirmisher and a cavalry archer when it suits them. Unfortunately, these aren't team bonuses, so you can't stack them at the same time, but the point is with either civ, your Genitour get a little extra damage output. The next 3 civs we'll look at are the American civilizations, and while all 3 are lacking bloodlines and husbandry for obvious reasons, they all at least have extra bonuses to somewhat offset that. Starting with the Mayans, of course, their stats don't look great at a glance, especially their HP, but they have a unique tech adding a second javelin for skirmishers, which you can see applies to the Genitour. The second projectile only does 1 damage, so it's roughly a 17% attack boost against halberdier for example, but at least it looks pretty intimidating from a distance, or when you have a large number of them. In a similar vein for the Aztecs, they have a unique technology for 1 extra attack and range on skirmishers. In this case, again, that also applies to the Genitour. At the same time, they're lacking bloodlines, the last armor upgrade, and husbandry, so I'm not convinced they'll actually be all that good in practice, but extra damage and range is certainly nice to have, and it also gives Aztecs a fast late game option to deal with cavalry archers, which they also happen to outrange. Finishing off the triple alliance of American civs as it were, we also see the Incas have +2 line of sight for skirmishers, which again incidentally also applies to the Genitour. In addition to that, it turns out they also benefit from Andean Sling, which removes the minimum range for both the skirmisher and Genitour. You're still missing some important upgrades, especially bloodlines, but at least they are helped in a few small ways to offset that. Next up, for Vietnamese, they also have a couple of things going on at the same time as well. Since they're an archery range unit, they of course benefit from 20% more HP, giving them the second most HP after Turks. Of course, Vietnamese also have the Imperial Skirmisher, and depending on what exactly you're up against and how much anti-cavalry your opponent has, you can probably justify either choice in the right situation. Moving on to Cumans, as we'd expect, they do benefit from their mounted unit speed boost. Unfortunately though, they don't have access to Bracer, so they lose a big chunk of range and attack in the late game. Here we run into a bit of an odd exception though. It turns out there's no effect of steppe husbandry on their creation time, so at least in this context they aren't considered a cavalry archer. Moving on to another steppe civilization, the Tatars also get a couple of benefits. The first is silk armor does give some extra armor for the Genitours, while not giving it to the skirmisher, making them a bit more appealing option than usual. They also give +2 line of sight for cavalry archers, and in this case that is including the Genitours. As it turns out, this bonus even stacks with the Incas line of sight for skirmishers, giving a lot of extra sight. Obviously, as Tatars, you still get the extra hill advantage as well, as it applies to all of your units. Taking a look now at the Huns, they miss out on the last armor upgrade, but have a nice discount for cavalry archers. In this case, it's a general enough interpretation of cavalry archer that it includes Genitours, making them cost just 32 food and 28 wood in Imperial. That's actually the same total resources as the elite skirmisher, and makes it an even more appealing choice in Imperial Age for Huns than usual. Similarly, for Koreans, their 20% wood discount of course applies, making them the same 28 wood cost as Huns, while they also get the archer armor upgrades for free. The trade-off is they're lacking bloodlines, and their bonuses also work for skirmishers, so the Genitours itself doesn't have a lot of extra appeal. Now so far, it may feel like just about everything for either skirmishers or cavalry archers seems to apply, though that might be because I started with the ones that do. Now let's get into the relevant sounding bonuses that don't help the Genitours, starting with the Byzantines. They have a pretty significant discount on their skirmishers along with some other counter units. There's really no reason to think it wouldn't also apply to the Genitours as well, but it turns out it doesn't. Considering Byzantines also lack bloodlines, their skirmisher line comes out looking like the clear choice in this comparison, costing 40% less per unit. The Britons are another, although in this case it may not be as surprising. Their range bonus for archers and unique tech yeomen, it turns out, don't affect Genitours, though of course the range bonus even specifically excludes skirmishers. Of course, this is because both are specific to foot archers and not just ranged units in general. Considering Britons both lack bloodlines and their skirmisher has one more range than usual, the Genitours here is actually fairly weak in comparison. Another situation that maybe shouldn't be a surprise is the Saracens bonus against buildings also doesn't apply, as it's again for quote foot archers. In this case though, foot archers does include skirmishers, who it seems are sometimes in that category and sometimes not. If you've played Age of Empires 2 for a while, you may remember Saracens used to have an anti-building bonus for cavalry archers, and that did apply to Genitours, making them a surprisingly effective choice against castles. But of course Saracens no longer have that bonus. These days, they just end up with fully upgraded Genitours who do no extra damage to buildings, whereas their skirmishers do. And finally, Lithuanians have what look like a couple of potential bonuses for Genitours that it turns out don't have any effect in practice. The first is Tower Shields, which gives skirmishers more armor, and you can see that doesn't help the Genitours stats. The second is the Lithuanian skirmisher speed boost, which also doesn't apply. This feels a bit inconsistent with whether Genitours are considered skirmishers or not, but you could argue it specifies these spearmen and skirmisher lines, which technically the Genitours isn't part of, and it is what it is. So that's all of the bonuses that both apply and the ones that don't. But before we wrap up, I have 3 civilizations we haven't seen yet that I'd like to highlight as being especially bad with Genitours. These are civilizations that, in addition to lacking relevant bonuses, also miss on most or all of the key upgrades. And as any of these 3, I would be hesitant about making Genitours even in a situation that seemed to be crying out for them. The first notably terrible civ is the Celts. They lack bloodlines, the final archer armor, bracer for the last bit of attack and range, as well as thumb ring. Thumb ring isn't that critical for the Genitours, as all it does is increase their accuracy from 90 to 100%. But unlike the American civilizations who also miss on a lot of those techs, Celts don't even have a relevant bonus to make up for it. The second notably terrible civ is the Franks. In their case, they get a bit of extra HP from a civ bonus for mounted units, but it really doesn't make up for lacking bloodlines, as it's based on a percentage of HP. And like the Celts, they're missing the last armor upgrade, bracer, and thumb ring. In a way, it feels like a shame, as mounted skirmishers would make for a pretty nice combo with French paladins against halberdiers without sacrificing mobility, as you typically have to with throwing axemen, skirmishers, or hand cannons. And finally, you could argue Burmese should be thrown in here at the end, but instead, I'm gonna go with the Teutons. While it's true that they do have bloodlines, at the same time, they're lacking bracer, thumb ring, and husbandry. Compared to the skirmisher side by side, they don't look too bad, but missing both speed and range is not an ideal combination for a unit that often relies on hit and run to be effective. But those are the major civilizations that I wanted to highlight. In total, we saw in almost every case you get the benefits of being a skirmisher or a cavalry archer, sometimes even aligning those bonuses to stack at the same time. I have to admit the omission of Parthian tactics and the Byzantines discount were the two most puzzling outliers for me. I assume those choices were for balance reasons, and looking in the game files, it seems they intentionally went out of their way to remove Parthian tactics effect for Genitours, who otherwise would have benefited by default. To me, that shows a lot of thought went into which bonuses should apply, though in general the devs were quite generous with including the Geniteur in pretty much every related bonus that I could think of. That'll do it for this one though. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you next time.